Hi everyone and welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
I'm Stephanie.
And today we're going to take you through our Newswatch unit. We have a couple of different topics to discuss today, both in more of the sort of technology area for these two bits of news. We've got one quite interesting one about a discovery that was made up in space, and another one that talks about a problem with AI, but not the kind of problem you might be expecting, sort of it's taking our jobs kind of problem. But
or the robots are going to take over and kill us.
No, this is a problem in terms of what using AI actually means for the planet. So definitely something to think about. We've got quite a lot to cover today, so let's read through our news stories and then come back and talk our way through them.
Mouse embryos survived in space. A team of Japanese scientists achieved a remarkable breakthrough in 2023. They successfully cultured mouse embryos on the International Space Station, ISS. And these embryos not only survived in space, but also developed normally. In 2021, the frozen mouse embryos were transported to the ISS via a rocket. Astronauts on the space station used specially designed equipment to thaw these early-stage embryos and then cultured them for 4 days in the ISS's microgravity environment. Unexpectedly, these embryos developed normally into the blastocyst stage, which is a critical phase for further development. When analyzing the blastocyst samples returned to Earth's laboratories, scientists also found no significant changes in DNA or gene status. This research is the first to demonstrate the possibility of mammalian reproduction in space. Future research will involve putting blastocyst embryos cultured on the space station into live mice. The goal is to confirm their potential for reproduction. This pioneering research holds profound significance for the future of human development.
AI advances drive alarming surge in water consumption. The demand for water resources has significantly increased in recent years due to artificial intelligence, AI, technology, and this situation may worsen further. AI processors generate a substantial amount of energy and considerable heat, requiring a significant amount of electricity and cooling. Consequently, data centers are compelled to use large volumes of water to cool their computer systems. It's estimated that every time a ChatGPT user presents 5 to 50 prompts or questions, it consumes around 500 milliliters, ml, of water. This quantity may vary depending on the location of the servers and the season. What's concerning is that most people seem to be unaware of AI's water demands. The rapid advancement of technology has placed us in a dilemma. While we pursue innovation and the development of new technologies, we are intentionally depleting Earth's natural resources. In the future, we will require more sustainable approaches to balance the cost of using AI. So our first story is about mouse embryos in space, and they managed to survive up there in space.
Which is shocking, I think.
Yeah, an embryo is just an unborn animal, an unborn cell that's growing inside. Now, normally we say growing inside the mother, but
usually,
in this case, things can be grown under lab conditions. People have been doing that for some time now. And so this isn't they brought two mice up into space and got them to have some babies. That would be interesting, but maybe not that much of a breakthrough.
I bet they've done that already.
Yes,
Pat, yeah.
I'm sure they probably have. So this is doing something slightly differently, but that's what an embryo is. So that's a key term for what we're going to look at. It's just unborn baby, whatever it happens to be.
So we've got a team of Japanese scientists. So this is coming from Japan, so keep that in mind. They achieved a remarkable breakthrough in 2023. Anytime you see remarkable breakthrough, it's kind of fun for anybody who has had that sort of experience. Remarkable, something so noteworthy that you want to say something about it. Wow, that's remarkable. It's amazing. It's terrific. How did you do that? A breakthrough usually is when some sort of new technology has been invented, or maybe I can use performers as an example. If you have a big break or breakthrough, you've had some sort of step in your career that makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, maybe you've been trying to get on Broadway forever and you get a big break. We just say a big break means, oh, I got the job. Maybe it's going to change my career forever. Breakthrough, we tend to use it more with science, I would say, but it's something that has been invented or discovered that kind of pushes that whole field forward quite a bit.
Yeah, it does imply that there's been some kind of resistance. Not resistance made by people, just we can't get this to work. We've been trying for ages and we haven't quite figured out the right technology. We're not quite doing it in the right way. We've had this plan, but we can't get it to work. And then finally, got it. There's something that's called a eureka moment.
Oh, yeah.
Eureka is an ancient Greek phrase that I think just means I have it, like I've got it.
Yeah.
And it was said by a philosopher once he realized something.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Archimedes sitting in a bath of water, and he realized the water level rose by the same amount that he'd got in and he weighed, so he made that explains a lot about math and how he can figure out the weight of certain items and things like that. And he ran around shouting, Eureka, I have it. That was a breakthrough. So you'll often see this referred to as a Eureka moment, where you have that sudden idea or sudden breakthrough that kind of solves something. But what was this breakthrough? Well, we see they successfully cultured mouse embryos on the International Space Station, or ISS. And these embryos not only survived in space, but also developed normally. Now, cultured here is quite a scientific, specific term. To culture something in these circumstances means you have grown it in a lab. It's been in a dish, in a tube, in some kind of incubating device. You've given it the food it needs to grow. That's what we mean by cultured. It's got nothing to do with like the culture of a country or a people. It is cultured, it is grown in lab conditions. I did a lot of this when I was at university.
I was going to say, because usually you have to be in specific fields like biology or chemistry or what were you studying?
I was studying biochemistry.
There you go.
So, yes, I was growing a whole bunch of different bacteria at various times, and they were cultures. One of those little plates with bacteria growing on it is a culture. It's a bacterial culture.
It's usually in glass, but not always.
Yeah, perspex sometimes, like a plastic dish. Yeah.
But it's interesting this is used as a verb. We typically say, they had a culture of something, or they had come up with this new bacteria in the laboratory. It was a culture. But here they cultured these mouse embryos on the International Space Station. And if you're into outer space and space stuff, I'm not necessarily, then you know about the ISS. We've heard about it before. We've talked about it before in this program. I wanted to mention Eureka, in just case you want to know how to spell it, because I couldn't remember it right off the top of my head. E-U-R-E.
K-A.
K-A. E-U-R-E-K-A. Eureka! With a capital letter. But you might hear it in a TV show or maybe in a movie. Someone says, Eureka! And they just mean, ta-da!
I got it.
I just thought of something or I discovered something. So anyway, they successfully cultured these little embryos for mice on the International Space Station. These embryos not only survived in space, and remember, the atmosphere in space is very different from what it's like on Earth. So it's amazing that they developed normally. That's, I think, the amazing thing that happened. There was nothing wrong with them. They went ahead and continued to develop normally. Nowadays, we have couples who perhaps can't get pregnant who go in and use artificial insemination. Well, they culture these little embryos the same way. So it's amazing that they developed normally. We always start our science testing on animals, and then it moves into humans. So maybe this is going to change something for us one day.
So we see that in 2021, the frozen mouse embryos were transported to the ISS via, or you can say via, a rocket. Via or via just means by way of. It's explaining often a method of transportation or certainly how something was done. You could say, oh, I received a job offer via email or via a phone call or via a text message, something like that. It just tells you the method.
Or you could say, I'm going to Phoenix via Seattle. So
it's the route.
Yeah, the route, the way I went through. You'll see that too.
So astronauts on the space station use specially designed equipment to thaw these early stage embryos. So they were frozen, then they need to be thawed. So that means they need to stop being frozen. They slowly warm them up so they can kind of be alive again.
We say thaw, just so you know.
I say, yeah, British was thaw.
Thaw.
Yeah, same as the god.
Yeah, if you're going to cook something, you'll take that piece of meat, usually out of the freezer, and you leave it on the counter for a couple hours or put it in the refrigerator where it's less cold. But then it melts, gets ready to cook.
So they then cultured them, that word again, for 4 days in the ISS's microgravity environment. Microgravity just means very low or very weak gravity, so it'll be different to Earth. It will be much lower, which means things float. So that's what it's like on the ISS. Their environment is not the same as Earth's gravity. It's microgravity. It's much lower.
Very interesting. So unexpectedly, something they didn't plan on, these embryos developed normally into the blastocyst stage.
Yes.
Now, I'll be honest, I had never seen this word before, and I did look it up.
But not for about 20-odd years since I was at university.
Oh, yeah, you would have seen it before.
Yeah.
That's fun.
It's a very early stage of the embryo. The cells in it they've fertilized, so it's kind of made the male and female parts have come together.
Okay.
But everything that's in it hasn't figured out what part of the body it's going to be yet.
Oh, neat.
So these are little tiny cells that could become brain cells or body or blood or bone or whatever.
Heart, whatever.
Yeah, they've got all the potential in there, but they haven't started to actually form into any of them. They're just a growing ball of cells that have got the potential to be whatever the body needs them to be. And it's a pretty key stage. It's an early stage. It needs to reach this stage before it can continue, because if things don't reach this stage, then it won't work. It won't grow properly.
That's amazing. So blastocyst stage.
Yes.
Just so you know, unless you go into science, some field, you won't see this word.
You will never need to know this word, yes.
Yeah.
But it is a critical phase for further development. It's a very early stage. It mentions cultured them for 4 days. And the blastocyst stage is only 4 to 5 days often. It's that early on in the process of creating a life.
That's cool. So when analyzing the blastocyst samples returned to Earth's laboratories, remember, it goes up to ISS and then it gets sent back down. The scientists then found no significant changes in DNA or gene status. And you don't want to see changes in DNA or genes because that means you're probably going to have a problem in the future. So laboratories, again, Pat probably spent quite a few hours in those.
Oh, yes.
We just call them labs for short.
Same. You will sometimes hear them in British English pronounced laboratories.
Oh, yeah. Say that again.
Laboratory.
There you go.
But yeah, everyone will say lab.
Lab. It's just easier. Where is John? Oh, he's in the lab. He's got some homework to do, or he's got an experiment he needs to do. So anyway, laboratories. But that's the good news. No significant changes in DNA or genes. This research is the first to demonstrate the possibility of mammalian reproduction in space. Mammalian, again, you won't be using this word. Just know that it means connected to a mammal. Mammal reproduction. When you reproduce, you create little babies.
Yeah. And of course, mammals are animals with warm blood. They feed their babies on milk. They give birth to live babies. Humans are mammals. Tigers, lions, panthers, bears. All mammals. Mice are mammals. Now, we put this part of the sentence in quotes because this is what comes from the official journal, the official announcement we're quoting here. So it is the first time that we can see, okay, we can have babies in space, basically. Cool. Future research, so they haven't finished, of course. There's always more to do.
Sure.
Future research will involve putting blastocyst embryos cultured on the space station into live mice. So this is where we get to the artificial insemination. You'll also hear the term IVF, in vitro fertilization, so done in a lab fertilization. Right. That's what in vitro means. It means in the lab rather than in real life under normal circumstances. So they'll take these little tiny growing balls of cells and put them into live mice. So the live mice will give birth to baby mice.
To the female mice.
To the real, and we'll be able to see, okay, how did the babies, these were fertile, these were done and grown in space. And so imagine if a human ship is on a long, long journey somewhere and we take human embryos with us, we can land on a planet and actually have things we can grow into human children or animals into farming animals for that planet. We don't need to take hundreds of cows on a spaceship.
Full-grown people.
We take their frozen embryos.
Yeah, it's a space saver.
It is, and this does sound like something out of a sci-fi movie, but this is why we have that final line. The goal is to confirm their potential for reproduction. So that's another big question. Can the babies that were produced kind of in space also have babies? Because if they can't reproduce themselves, then it's no good.
Yeah.
So they've got to do that. They've got to do all these extra researches and breed the mice and make sure everything's okay. But this pioneering research holds profound significance for the future of human development. Something that's pioneering is new. It's breaking new ground.
Yeah.
It involves breakthroughs, that word we used earlier. Something that's profound is kind of very important, changes things in a very big, very large way. It's significant. So profound significance means very significant importance, very significant significance, changing things in a great big way.
Well, that's our first news story. We're going to come back and talk about the next one. But first, we're going to take a quick break.
Welcome back, everyone. We've dealt with our first news story in our Newswatch article. Let's take a look at our second.
Let's do AI, which is artificial intelligence, advances drive alarming surge in water consumption. So we've had a lot of advances in AI, which is a little scary for all of us because we haven't quite determined what the law is surrounding AI, at least in America, because I follow court cases a lot. I like the law because my dad was a lawyer. We have a lot of people suing other folks because they say you can't take my stuff and use it. That's illegal. We used to have copyright privileges and patents on things. So we're moving into a new world, as we like to say. Well, the advances that they're making in AI, our author says it's driving an alarming surge in water consumption. A surge is when something increases quite a bit. Usually we use it to talk about electricity surges. If you are plugging in your computer, you might be very careful about buying a surge protector, which it limits the amount of a sharp increase in electricity that goes to your computer because that can kill your computer. It can destroy it. So a surge just means an increase in something. And here we're talking about consuming water or using up water.
Yeah, the article starts by saying the demand for water resources, or resources either way, has significantly increased in recent years due to artificial intelligence, or AI technology. And this situation may worsen further. A demand is a need, it's a requirement, it's what is needed by a particular thing. So you might not think it, but computers, which you should never get wet, need a lot of water.
Yeah.
And we'll explain why in the next couple of sentences, but the use of this AI technology, which of course has really exploded in the last kind of 18 months with generative AI, ChatGPT, Google Bard, and all of those things, it's really shot up in the last few years, and it's creating this great big demand, a real need for even more water to be used. So, but why? What is it that requires water?
Going to find out. So there's a demand for water resources. Demand, a lot of people want something. When the demand goes up, prices go up too.
That's usually the case.
When the demand goes down, the prices fall as well. So yeah, there's a great demand for water resources, and it's significantly increased in recent years, as we talked about. AI processors generate a substantial amount of energy and considerable heat. I would have guessed, the heat would probably be a problem. A computer processor is that CPU. If you have a desktop computer, which most people don't anymore, we all have laptops these days, it seems like, at least in the office space of companies. But if you had one of those CPUs, that's the processor. It's running data and these computer programs for you, and it takes a lot of power. So those processes are producing a substantial amount of energy. A substantial just means a great deal, a great amount, a lot.
Yeah, and it's not just energy, it's also considerable heat. So a lot of heat is being produced. And computers get hot. If you ever run your computer for a while, they get hot. They've got fans in them to try and keep them cool, but they will still get hot, especially if you're making the computer do more stuff. The more stuff you make it do, the hotter it gets.
When it's thinking hard.
Yes, exactly. It's almost like a little person in there working really hard and getting a bit sweaty. But this requires a significant amount of electricity. So, we need to power the servers, power the processors, and cooling because they get very hot, as we've said. So you need to cool them down.
Yeah.
And sometimes fans just won't really work because air can only be so cool. And you can use water, which is what we get to here, consequently, or as a consequence, as a result. And I think we talked about the different pronunciation of this before, didn't we?
You say consequently, and we say consequently.
There we go.
Yeah.
So data centers which is where there are great big, huge servers and giant computers with huge processors for doing all of this stuff in the background of your own desktop. They are compelled to use large volumes of water to cool their computer systems. If you're compelled to do something, you need to do it. You don't really have much of a choice in the matter. That's the only thing they can do. They can't get giant fans. They can't get huge AC units. Those wouldn't quite work. So they use water. And what they'll do is they'll put the pipes side by side or running past each other. So the cool water rushes along, cools everything down without actually getting it wet. And then warmer water will move out. It's heat transference.
Yeah, because it starts out cool. But of course, if cool water comes up against something that's hot, it's no longer cool water. So it's an interesting process. So I grew up in a desert where we... of course, we have air conditioning now, but before air conditioning was invented, we had fans, and then we had something called a swamp cooler. So you had a machine that you would pour water into it, and then that would go through a fan process, and it would cool you down. It works in the desert pretty well because it's not humid. We could never have swamp coolers in Taiwan.
It wouldn't work, would it?
Or even, I tried one in New York. It doesn't work there either. Air conditioning is a great blessing, but they can't have AC units there because those also generate a lot of heat. So it's a lot of energy, and when you have a lot of energy being produced, it typically produces a lot of heat. So they were compelled to use these large volumes of water to cool their computer systems. It's estimated, if you estimate something, you're kind of taking an educated guess at something. You're not completely sure. And sometimes I'll just say, don't quote me, which means I'm not absolutely positive. Don't quote me. But I think, or this is estimated that every time a Chat GPT user presents 5 to 50 prompts or questions, and that's what we call those if you use Chat GPT. They're not called questions. For some reason, we have to use, some new verbiage or new way of calling something. We call it a prompt. You've used these, haven't you, before?
Yeah. The prompt could be anything from asking a question like, hey, what can you tell me about this, to something more specific like, write me this or produce this, or here are some things. What's the difference between these two terms? Or there's an awful lot you can do, but basically any single entry where you hit enter or return after it is a prompt. And they now have these jobs called prompt engineers. And prompt engineers, their job is to train the AI to answer questions better by putting in better results. Because with AI, it's kind of if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys is an old phrase.
It's only as good as the time that's put, or it's only as good as the information that's put into it.
If you give it a very specific question with some exact information and search parameters and details, it will give you a much better result. If you give it something a bit vague and not that good, if the English you use isn't that good, although of course you can use Chinese, it understands it very well. I actually think it's better than Google Translate. If I really wanted to translate a big block of text, I would put it into Chat GPT and say, what's this mean? And it would do a better job at the translation than Google. But there you go. So, but each one of those is a prompt, and one set of 5 to 50, somewhere in that region. Then the servers, or the GPT servers that run it all in the background, consume around 500 milliliters, or ml, of water. You guys will be very familiar with ml. You'll see it on pretty much any kind of drink or anything you buy.
But why don't we say ml? Well, because it's easy for us. This is our language.
But we do say mil.
We don't.
In the UK, a lot of people say mil. How much is that? It's like 50 mil.
That's also because that's your chief way of measuring things. For liquids, for us, it's
true.
Not.
Yes, we
don't use milliliter.
We use the metric system for almost everything.
Except for temperature.
Yeah,
right?
we use temperature in degrees Celsius.
Oh, you use yards for some reason.
We put our distances in miles. If you buy beer, you buy it in a pint. It still says pints on a lot of milk bottles.
That's interesting.
And gold is still in carat, rather than anything else.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we mostly use the metric system here. So milliliters or mil is pretty common.
I was a young kid when we were trying to talk about that, and I didn't want it. Yeah, anyway, so interesting to talk to someone who's actually used ChatGPT. So it does consume around 500 milliliters, or as you said, mils. You guys say mils. Usually if you say ML, people aren't going to know what you're talking about. They might think you're saying major league.
It could be in context-based, like how much, if you're in a science lab, if we go back to that last story.
Then it'll be fine.
Yeah, if you say, can you give me like 5 mil of this solution, and people will know what's meant
That's great.
It's the right kind of terminology for the situation and the context.
Yeah, so look at the situation you're in and then make a decision. But if you need to be clear, use the whole word, milliliters. So this quantity may vary depending on the location of the servers and the season. Yeah, I want to say no duh, and in Chinese, 难怪. 难怪, obviously, because I lived in a desert. You need a lot more water than you do, say, in Taiwan or in England even, where you get rain so often.
Oh, tell me about it.
Sorry.
So we carry on and we say what's concerning is that most people seem to be unaware of AI's water demands.
Yeah.
So you think, oh, great, we've got GPT, we've got the AI, we can do a load of more stuff. We don't realize this stuff has not necessarily been reported because that would be bad publicity for AI.
You don't pull it out of the air. It actually takes real water to run. Yeah.
And because of this, the rapid advancement or advance, you could just say advance there, it would still be fine, of technology has placed us in a dilemma. Now, for this word, you can also say dilemma. Dilemma is probably more common in the UK.
And we say dilemma in America.
Either way, it is a very difficult choice, neither of which has a perfect outcome. It's not an easy one where it's, okay, obviously we do this. It's like every way you're making a sacrifice, you're making a compromise. It's a really tough choice that there are no necessarily great outcomes, and you don't want to make that choice.
And sometimes we'll say, oh, we're in a no-win situation. Like if it's good, any way you go, it's a win-win, right? It's a win-win situation. But a dilemma can be really tough because either way, either direction, or either choice is going to be tough. So yeah, it's placed us in a dilemma. While we pursue innovation and the development of new technologies, we are at the same time intentionally, which means on purpose, depleting Earth's natural resources. If you deplete something, you use it up. So, yeah, it's something you have to think about. You want to deplete all your resources. You use up whatever supply you have of something.
So, yeah, it's a bit of a difficult choice. Do we keep all these advances that AI is bringing us? And we're not just talking about AI for use like doing your homework for you, which, by the way, don't. I'm going to put that out there. You can tell when something's made by AI. If you've looked at it enough, you start to realize there are things that AI does that are pretty easy to spot.
And AI makes mistakes all the time.
Yes.
I want to say, too, in the U.S., we've got a lot of court cases where lawyers are being sued for using ChatGPT to come up with, evidence in cases. But AI is making up stuff that doesn't exist.
It'll do that.
So, yeah, but they're getting sued. So be careful. You need to exercise your brain. Don't take the easy way. You'll be grateful that you did the work yourself. Yeah.
On the other hand, there are other kinds of AI that work to keep things going and do stuff that is really important stuff. It's running in the background of a lot of computer programs and important things that actually matter a great deal. So it's not just, it's a fun tool to use.
No.
It's doing a lot of other very important jobs.
It's not just a way to cheat.
Right. So we are using it. It's not going to go away. We've got it now. But if we want to choose to use it, we have to deal with the amounts of resources it consumes. That's the dilemma. And so that's why we conclude by saying in the future, we will require more sustainable approaches to balance the cost of using AI. So people will be working on other ways to cool it. People will be working on maybe we can build the thing underground so it'll stay cooler.
Yeah, it would be cooler some places.
Things like that. So people will be knowing, okay, we've got to take this into account if we're going to keep using AI and all the power and heat it's going to create.
It's going to be fun to see what the future holds for both of these areas, right?
Right.
For embryos developing in space and also for the demand for more water if you have AI. Thanks for joining us, guys. We hope you'll come back soon. And we hope that any news in your life is good news. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Pat. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.